glad to have you with us today. We are privileged and grateful to have an extraordinary individual among us, someone who is not only the cornerstone in his domain but also a source of inspiration for all of us. Without further ado, I take great pride and honor in inviting our esteemed chief guest, our Honorable Minister for Information Technology and Digital Services, Government of Tamil Nadu, Dr. Palanivel Thiaga Rajan sir, to deliver the inaugural address.
Professor Dr. T.R. Gopalakrishnan, the head of the Department of Journalism and Communications, Dr. S. Armstrong, the member of the Convener Committee and syndicate member and professor and head of the Center for Endangered Languages, Mr. Ashish Khan, who has just given us a very enlightening, thought-provoking demonstration of the capabilities of AI in the media space. The registrar and Dr. Beulah Rachel Rajaratnamani, who is due to give the vote of thanks, all the distinguished guests, faculty, students, media, good morning. Thank you for inviting me to this conference, which is very timely, very apt, and also I think going to add a lot of value to all of you who are here through the rest of the day. I must say that I was here once 2 or 3 years ago when I was finance minister to participate in some other seminar, and it was a very thought-provoking seminar even then. I forget what the topic was, something about the law, constitution, federalism, something, and I'm happy to be back in the same hall because I have the fond memories of that seminar. This university is very unique. Not only is it one of the oldest universities, and certainly in South India, it has so many amazing alumni. It has provided education for so long. It has iconic buildings. It has unparalleled legacy and history. But I think what's really important about it is that it keeps trying to move with the times. Many such institutions are stuck in the past. And so I'm very happy when I come to such conferences and I see such collaborations with firms like Randomwalk. And it shows that even very traditional universities, very aged universities can actually keep up with the times. I know that it takes a long time to build cultures of excellence in any institution, and it's very easy to see those decay. I spent a lot of years in academic institutions, too many probably, but there was an old saying when I was in an academic setting that says the easiest way to downgrade the quality of a department is to put a second level talent at the top of it, because first level talents are so secure in their knowledge that they only hire other first level talents even if they're going to be better than them. Second level talents are so insecure that they only hire third level, fourth level, and so forth, and so you decay the quality of an institution within one kind of hiring cycle. So in that kind of risk-prone environment, I'm very happy to see that this university continues to maintain its position as a leading intellectual bastion and keep up with the times and have conferences such as this and partnerships such as this. My own journey and experience with technology is actually quite long. Before I get to AI, I must start by saying that my first access to a personal computer in my house was about 1980 or 81. The first IBM PC that was for widespread average citizen use. And I remember it had 64 KB of RAM. and 20 MB hard drive. That was the box, and a green cathode ray screen monitor, and there was no notion of mouse and all back then. So I've been in some way or the other engaged with the field of technology as a student, as a researcher, as a consultant, later as a trader, banker, administrator, risk manager of global financial risk across many markets, then as a Minister of Finance here, and then as a Minister for IT. And I'd say at the heart of it, really the two greatest components of information technology is the sheer volume of information that can be generated, captured, stored, analyzed, or used to do things like training. So that's the first thing, is just how much information. No human being can carry that kind of information in your head. No paper system is useful, because how much ever information you have, you cannot access it quickly. So usable data, the scale and scope of it, is the first driver of the notion of technology. The ability to generate it, capture it, store it, analyze it. And then of course the second component is how much computing power, how much analysis can you do. Both of these have grown exponentially in the last, let's say, if I say 1980, widespread public access for the first time in the last, 45 years. But beyond the scale, the scope, the two things that really matter is the cost. How expensive is it, and how uniquely exclusive is it because of the cost. And that also, as you all know, has become very, very advanced now. I think something like 75% plus of Tamil Nadu has access to the internet through a smartphone. Now that's an amazing scale of penetration, or speed of penetration. And then of course, how usable is it? Back in my day, you had to learn some language, you had to know some kind of programming language or operating system language to actually access a computer. Now of course, they're all what you see is what you get: touchscreen, easy interface access, and you should be able to basically pick up a phone and use it without having to think twice. In that evolution, this notion of AI, the kind of boom over the last year and a half since the release of ChatGPT 4, and in fact, by pure coincidence, this afternoon I'm having some of the team, both from the US and the India head, visit me for a discussion. I think this has been an inflection point. For those of us old enough, we know that this technology has seen many comings. It is not a on-off, it is a continuum, it is a spectrum. And at different times, the rate of acceleration or the step function has been evident, and then it kind of levels off at a different stage, and then it takes off. So in that sense, this is probably the third or fourth inflection point or step function in my lifetime that I can remember, in the notion of a neural network, of learning models, of self-generation, auto-generation, of what we now call generative AI. And there's now the move from generative AI or AI specific to one application, one domain, one context, towards the notion of AGI, or artificial general intelligence, which is basically replicating a human being, where that model can do almost anything a human being can do. One of the things that most people don't realize, and unless you are in the heart of it, the amount of work, the amount of data, the amount of analysis and decomposition that is required to actually get the model to learn is huge. The amount of man hours that are required, depending on the subject. I went to Coimbatore recently to open a company that has a few hundred employees, a contractor to autonomous vehicle companies, and they are basically passing images and annotating and tagging them in a way that the model can learn, so that it can drive, the car can drive itself, right? And so the number of scenarios that you can think of just vary so much. I was in the Bay Area after many years last summer, and one of the engineers of the Waymo car company took me on a ride. And he was explaining to me that his whole team, many of them, many hours a week, all their job was to take construction sites and what would happen to traffic flows and patterns around construction sites and road closures and changes around construction sites, and decompose those and annotate those, fragment those so that the machine could learn and reintegrate those in a way it could figure out what to do. Just one aspect, construction site, right? Now there's as many variations of what could happen in real life as you can think. So in a way, I think we are at the beginning of the age. We are not nearly at the maturing of the age. Whatever this age of AI is, it's probably, in my view, about a generation to go, meaning about 15, 20 years before we can see it ubiquitously, for this plus other reasons. Of course, when you see things like DeepSeek, you wonder if the notion that there's only one way, the American way with the kind of NVIDIA GPU, is really the right notion. Of course it's not. But even with all the breakthroughs, I still believe, both in terms of the sheer amount of data that needs to be annotated, transformed, parsed, stored, as well as the amount of computing power that needs to be universally accessible at a reasonable cost, and the amount of energy that such data centers and computing requirements will need, is going to take some time. But coming to the business at hand, in terms of its impact in media, we've already seen some brilliant examples today. But I was thinking actually of the two extremes of this kind of technology. And the one is agglomeration, which technology has always been doing, right? Like for those of you who may or may not have done finance or corporate kind of work, we used to think, I used to be on Wall Street, I used to be a trader of relatively low risk, high volume paper back maybe 20 years ago. Then I moved to different products. But commercial paper, which is very short dated, unsecured credit, 1 day, 7 day, 10 day borrowings with large corporates of very high value, high ratings. We used to trade, I think in the US market, something like $2 trillion a day. In and out, buy, sell, average life 3 days, 5 days, right? Or maybe the outstanding was 2 trillion, maybe 500, 600 billion of it traded. Zero risk almost, very low risk, just buying, selling. But there was no company that had a market cap more than maybe a couple $100 billion, maybe $500 billion. Now what the agglomeration of technology, the oligarchy has done is now you have companies in the technology space whose market capitalizations are greater than the GDP of India, right? If you take companies like Apple or Microsoft or any of these big companies, they have become so dominant and become such in their aspect monopolies. So in a way, it's almost the antithesis of what capitalism is supposed to provide, which is level playing fields, competition, scope for innovation, etc. So that's the bad part. And we are now seeing, let's say till 2 weeks ago, before DeepSeek, we were starting to see ChatGPT become that kind of one-stop place. But the flip side of it, the thing that I really use as the example is the movie business, coming directly to our field. I don't know how many of you have studied the financing of movies and the nature of the industry. Actually, it's a very interesting financial subject, because at least in the United States, at least till about, let's say 15-20 years ago, the movie business had transformed into basically a financing business, right? In the sense that the large studios, when they looked at movie scripts, they were only looking at them as option purchases. Will you have a mega hit? If you have a mega hit, will you be able to do a sequel? Will you be able to do merchandising? Will you be able to do other things with it? And if so, what kind of contract should you write with the actors? Because after it becomes a hit, the negotiating power for the sequel will be much higher. And so it just became a financing business. It became like an option valuation business. And so there were no movies being made for $20 million, $30 million, $50 million. There were either mega movies being made for hundreds of millions of dollars, or like art house movies being made for $2 million. What was happening to the rest of the world? The haves were getting much richer or much more optional value, and the have-nots were being pushed, and there was no middle anymore. That has transformed dramatically with the onset of OTT. Now with Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hotstar and Lionsgate and 15 other OTT platforms, now there are a huge number of movies being made for 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, 50 million in the US context, and you can just translate that to the Indian context. So in a way, technology has basically democratized the media space, at least in the entertainment space. Now you add AI on top of that, and we have already seen today that AI can do many things. It can be augmentative. It can make the performance of individuals or teams or companies better by being a supporting mechanism. It can be customizing. It can make sure that everybody sees a different version of what suits them and not the actual common platform. It can be creative. It can be what we call generative, that is creating something from nothing. And of course, all these can be for good or for not so good outcomes, right? It can be for the value of, let's take for example, AI augmented learning. There's so much information to show that if you have the loop with a good AI assistant, the ability to correct learning shortfalls in schools, including our own Government of Tamil Nadu schools, is much better than having just a human being evaluate papers, right? It's impossible for the best teacher in the world to process as much information about each individual student as effectively as the machine can do, because infinite memory, it has limitless capability to keep slicing and dicing this data. So in things like learning, it can actually hugely increase not just the productivity of the teaching system, but the actual outcome, how many weeks it takes to bring a student who's subpar to a particular level. In many other fields we have seen, and particularly in the law and in medicine, I have seen personally, I have companies that I've gone and opened or have inspected or just visited. The machine can do things that are beyond the realm of human capability. Right? The best examples I give, for example, in the field of law, all these AI-assisted litigation support systems can analyze cases in ways that human beings cannot. It can read comprehensively across a level of databases that no human being's memory is going to match perfectly. I sat as a member of the GST Council of India, and I was on a subcommittee or group of ministers to look at how to tax gambling. Lotteries was already decided, horse racing, casinos and online gaming. Every time we met, we got some other case cited to us by some other interested party that had some other interpretation of what constituted a game of chance, what constituted a game of skill. Now, I'd like to think that this is not just because every judge does whatever they want to do, because really they should be driven by precedent, but because they themselves don't have enough information. These cases date from 1970s to 2023. Each case, if you don't know when you're writing your judgment what all other relevant cases are there, you're going to start going off on a tangent. So sometimes they'll say it's black, sometimes they say it's white, sometimes they say it's gray, sometimes it's dark gray. Computers don't have this problem. They can look at every single case instantaneously and come out with answers. And so if you look at the possibilities for AI in the law, not only will they give you much better assessments of outcomes of litigation, of affidavits, of plaints, but many of the systems I've seen, if you can train them based on the judgments of a particular series of judges, they can tell you, this case, if it goes before this judge, you'll get this outcome. If it goes before this other judge, you'll get this other outcome. So, these are all things that no human being can do. Or maybe the best lawyers in the world who have practiced only in this high court for 30 years, maybe they have built it into their head. But most human beings cannot do that. Same way in healthcare, I've seen in radiology, particularly if you take x-rays, I've seen what an AI-assisted chest x-ray analysis can do faster, better, more comprehensively than any human being. because they can look at not only millions of x-rays, they can look at longitudinal analyses of x-rays. This patient, the last 4 x-rays, what has been the progression, what does that say about this kind of cancer, and therefore how will I apply that pattern to somebody else's x-ray. No human being can do that. It's not in the realm. We can't do it across that many patients. So in these fields we are going to see they're going to break the boundaries of human limitations, and they're going to exceed all but the best experts, at least, and maybe even the best experts. So that raises the question now, the 3 main dilemmas that I see over here. The first is, if a machine can do the diagnosis better than a doctor, will I or can I allow the machine's diagnosis to be transmitted directly to the patient? Who will take responsibility if it turns out 1 in a million chance that is wrong? Why should I run a medical profession? Why should I have a specialization in radiology? Why should I give a license if the machine can do the job? And so our societal norms will still require that even the best AI will need some human being to then interpret it, put a signature on it, who's licensed to be a radiologist by the medical association of some company, who has gone through the process, or her has gone through the process, and she says, I agree with this and I say so. So this is where the regulation and the government role and the self-regulating bodies like the Indian Medical Association or equivalents in other societies come in. The other question is, if you can do fragmentation of society through customization, that is, there's one piece of news, that news can be shown to me the way I want it, it can be shown to you the way you want to see it, and the machine already knows what you want to see because it has been observing your behavior, especially if you have things like Alexa and OK Google and all this stuff. It's listening to you all the time. So if it's listening to you all the time, it is basically analyzing you in ways that you don't know, and it knows you in some ways better than you know yourself. And if it then has the right to customize the content to show you what you want, what happens to our society if each of us sees the same event in a different way? Anyway, we're going to see it with different mindsets. If we see the same image, I interpret the image or the video, I interpret it with what I know about the world, you interpret what you know about the world. Already we are customizing in our heads. If the machine customizes before it comes to me, now I start wondering, is there going to be any commonality left in our society, or are we all going down this rabbit hole that only my perceptions are being reinforced and I'm driven into some extreme? Social media is already doing this anyway. Now AI can do this in kind of ways that we cannot imagine. So I think it's a very interesting time, because of course all this implies that you need serious regulation, right? You cannot allow free rein with no guardrails, no boundaries. But the history of regulation, at least in advanced places like technology, is that the regulators can never keep up with the innovators. It's just the economic model. Innovators get paid a lot more and have a lot more incentive, and regulators, are regulators. They're bureaucrats basically at some level. We have examples where self-regulation by industry bodies does a decent job, and therefore governments in a lot of cases actually authorize self-regulatory bodies, even in something as simple as chartered accountancy. It is the ICAI that issues a chartered accountancy qualification and does disciplinary proceedings at the first level before it comes to the government. But even there, I would say innovation, at least in my experience in the banking and derivative and securitization world, innovation in accounting and in what otherwise chartered accountants should be certifying in terms of perfected interests or controlling interests, that was a huge arbitrage opportunity for at least the 10 years before the global financial crisis. So even in accounting, if there's ways that innovation is going to keep up beyond regulation or professional control, then imagine what happens in AI. So I think this is going to be one of the major issues in our time. It has to be iterative. It has to be with industry involvement, because the government per se is not capable of keeping up with this. But of course there's going to be a boom, right? I mean, just like the movie business, the song business, the poetry business, About a month or 6 weeks ago, we ran the inaugural lecture series under the Tamil Virtual Academy, and we had my friend Madan Karki, and he showed how his poems could be customized based on who he thinks is listening to it. He's not doing it consciously, he's feeding the engine, and the engine is customizing the poem based on, or the lyrics of the song, based on what he thinks they're learning, or what the machine knows their previous listening history is. So a lot of things are going to change. This is a very timely topic, and I'm very happy that, as always, Madras University is hosting a conference on this topic. It's going to be probably a few iterations before we reach some equilibrium. There's a lot of risk for the societal model. There's a lot of opportunity for individuals, for artists, for creators, for journalists, for people in the media space. I'm happy to note that in this same event, our member of the convener committee heads a center for endangered languages. So we're actually going all the way back in history, and we're in the same space. This is indicative of a healthy society, of a good educational model. I wish you all a wonderful conference, and thank you for giving me this opportunity.